Bonjour. Merci d'avoir accepté ce petit retard dû au fait que nous...
Good afternoon. Sorry about the slight delay we've had. We had our press conference right before the meeting. It's a very important day for me, so I'm moved, but I'm very happy that this initiative can take place. I think it's important, and I'm grateful to all those of you who were willing to participate. We have a very full agenda, so without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to my colleague, former chair of the European Parliament's Envy Committee, Jo Leinen. Then, thanks to the director of the Green Cross, we will hear Mr. Gorbachev's message. Mr. Gorbachev cannot be with us because of health reasons. Then President Fischer, Vice President of the International Criminal Court, is here. It's an honor for us to have him. He will say something and then we will be able to start the discussion. Jo.
We have a translation in 3 languages, Francais, English and Espanol. Corinne Lepage, thank you very much for the huge effort you have done in the last months to bring us together in the Citizen Chamber of the European Union in the European Parliament. And I'm happy to co-chair an exciting afternoon with a very important issue that we will treat in the course of this afternoon. It's actually the 3rd event in this House to look for the fight against impunity and as well injustice on this planet. We had in July 2011 a hearing in the Environment Committee of the Parliament with Professor Antonio Ambrani, which I welcome very much, from the International Academy of Environmental Sciences in Venice. And that was the opening in the Parliament to deal with environmental crimes and the unsatisfactory situation that we have, that there is impunity and those who commit the crimes are not sanctioned. Then last May, again under Globe EU, we had a big event in the House, again to promote and profile the issue. And there was already the Vice President of the International Criminal Court in The Hague, the Judge Kuno Jakob Tafusa. I welcome him very much. He just arrived from The Hague and will come up front a bit later. Welcome again. We are very happy to have you among us. And then today, this is the biggest event. And I think that is the real starting point at the end with the Charter of Brussels, to send a message to the world that we have to improve the situation. And I welcome all of you, so many important people, to welcome ambassadors, former ministers of environment, of course members of this House and of parliaments. We have professors and researchers and prosecutors, of course the civil society with the various NGOs that deal with these questions. Now, the European Parliament, by its very existence, is very vocal against the violation of rights, whatever it is. We are really prominent around the world in the fight against violation of human rights. And we are fighting for rights of other existing living beings, the rights of animals. We have done over years a big campaign and lots of initiatives for the rights of our other living beings. And of course, we are very vocal against the destruction of ecosystems, of nature and Mother Earth. And I think this afternoon we will discuss with each other, exchange views, what big scandals we have seen in the last years and decades. Scandals that destroyed the ecosystems, that destroyed thousands and hundred thousands of lives, and those who are responsible are not really taken to responsibility and sanctioned. So I'm happy that all of you took the effort to come here, and of course we will debate what can be done in the European Union with our Court of Justice. But since we have global goods, we have common goods, the atmosphere, the seas, the forests, whatever is a common global good, and what we can do on the global level with an international court. Yeah, I should start with this few remarks of introduction, and would greet individually those who testify and whom we have invited. But it was a great pleasure for us when Mr. Gorbachev agreed to come. He was willing to join us this afternoon. He is the president of Green Cross International and has done so much as well for the ecological cause. For health reasons, unfortunately, he cannot join us. We wish him all the best. And we are pleased to have Mr. Adam Konchevsky. He is the chief director of the Green Cross International. And I would like you to start and kick off this afternoon with the contribution from the Green Cross International and on behalf of Mr. Gorbachev. Please, you have the floor.
Buenos dias, bonjour à tous et à toutes. Greetings to you, ladies and gentlemen. I will be speaking in English, so for those who need the earphones, please go ahead. It is a great pleasure for me to be here and to address you on behalf of Green Cross on this very important call for the creation of a criminal court for the environment. Now, President Gorbachev, who cannot join us, as you just said, for medical reasons, sends his best regards and his wishes of success for the meeting, for the conference, in the hope that this will move us one step closer to the creation of a legal framework to address environmental crimes. President Gorbachev specifically asked me to thank Corinne Lepage for the invitation to participate in this forum and to praise her leadership and commitment to this agenda. So let me begin by saying that today the true dimensions of the environmental crisis can no longer be ignored. The Millennium Ecosystems Assessment Report stated that we are destroying the life support systems of the planet at an alarming rate. Science tells us that we are polluting the air, the water, the soil, to the extent that health, human health, and other species are at risk. Climate change is accelerating, with the melting of glaciers, the flooding of coastal regions, and increasingly devastating extreme weather events. According to a recent World Health Organization report, avoidable environmental hazards already contribute to diseases and injuries that kill over 13 million people every year. And still, economic development is consistently prioritized over the environment. And the balance between the two, economic development and the environment, is presented as a zero-sum game. In reality, development and the environment are entirely intertwined. And by choosing one over the other, we end up undermining both. This is the situation we find ourselves in. Unprecedented and unrelentless environmental degradation and the overexploitation of natural resources on a scale that affects the behavior of ecological and physical systems of the planet. Science and evidence in the real world is increasingly confirming that if we continue on the present business-as-usual path of environmentally destructive, inequitable, resource and energy-intensive development is simply not possible. The situation is not only unsustainable, It is outright dangerous. We are faced with a global emergency, and yet questions of ecology are routinely sidelined, ignored, and forgotten in all areas of politics and law, despite decades of campaigning by environmental groups and the growing concerns of citizens around the world. For over 20 years, Green Cross has worked for the recognition of the vital importance of nature and the environment for human well-being and security, insisting that it is not possible to separate humanitarian, economic, and environmental challenges. It is this firm belief that led to the creation of Green Cross as a Red Cross for the environment back in 1993. And while it is undeniable that international environmental law has progressed in the last 2 decades, threats to the environment and their terrible consequences for humanity are still not being properly acknowledged. The challenge of the 21st century is to reverse this process and to ensure compliance with polluter pays principles and the enforcement of proportionate law, sanctions to protect ecology.
Just a moment.
Yes.
I think we have a problem.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for you, and then just continue.
So I'll just carry on where I left. So while it is undeniable that international environmental law has progressed in the past 2 decades, threats to the environment and their terrible consequences for humanity are still not being properly acknowledged. The challenges of the 21st century is to reverse this process and to ensure that compliance with polluter pays principles and the enforcement of proportionate sanctions to protect ecology and people are put in place. Of the missing links in international law and governance, the recognition and tackling of environmental crime is high on the list. And this is why Green Cross supports the call for the creation of criminal courts for crimes against the environment. Principle 13 of the Rio 92 Declaration provides that states will develop national laws regarding liability and compensation for victims of pollution and other environmental damage. But in reality, this rarely happens because many environmental agreements do not have proper instruments for enforcement. It is telling that the few that mandate proper instruments for enforcement are actually some of the most successful. And these include the Basel Convention on Hazardous Waste or the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. So a stronger legal institutional framework for crimes against the environment at the European and international levels can help address these weaknesses and loopholes. Fortunately, as evidenced by this gathering and the growing number of campaigns by citizens around the world, the tide is turning against this impunity. And so the human right to live in a healthier environment, for which Green Cross has campaigned over the years, is increasingly recognized at all levels. And progress is being made in the sphere of public opinion, in the legal and academic worlds, and more slowly on the political scene. We are moving forward. In France, largely thanks to Corinne Lepage, a long-awaited groundbreaking result was achieved in 2012 regarding the Erika oil spill. France's highest court confirmed the verdict of negligence passed against Total, over 20,000 tons of oil spilled after the wreck of oil tanker and upheld the maximum fine of 375,000 euros. Now this may seem extremely small, but they also ordered to pay 200 million euros in damages, including several million for environmental damages. This is the first compensation of this kind in France. This is a positive development that should be reinforced by the strengthening of EU law so that no actors involved in this kind of negligence can be immune from liability. It is only with real sanctions, with proportional fines, and the ability to enforce them that we will have a truly effective EU criminal law framework that can serve as an effective tool for environmental protection. And awareness of criminal crime is also growing in other institutions. I'm thinking of Interpol, which now runs several international programs to address illegal logging, pirate fishing, and toxic waste trafficking. It is now clear that these crimes are often linked with other organized crimes like money laundering and drug trafficking, and have far-reaching consequences in terms of impacts on ecosystems, communities, and global security. Another vital area of progress is citizen engagement. Wider media reporting of environmental crimes and increased concerns about climate change and resource depletion is leading to public campaigns for the recognition of ecocide as a crime against peace and the need for the creation of an international court, criminal court for the environment that we are actually discussing today. Citizens are better informed. They are no longer willing to tolerate this situation, and public pressure is a growing force behind this movement for greater environmental justice, and politicians are well advised to take notice. So in conclusion, let me quote President Gorbachev in saying that we need a glasnost and a perestroika for the environment. For Green Cross, this means a transformation of our economic and development model to stop and reverse the degradation of planetary ecosystems and the overexploitation of natural resources. This entails new business models, a circular economy, dramatic increases in energy and resource efficiency, the taxing of scarce resources and not of labor, to name just a few. And a strong legal framework for the environment and institutions like the European and international environmental courts can play a central role in this process. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Koniszewski, for this eminent, important contribution. Perestroika and glasnost for the environment. That is really telling us the story where we have to go. So thank you very much, and our best greetings from all of us here to Mr. Gorbachev, and we need him many, many more years in the fight for achieving these objectives. Thanks a lot. Yeah, then I would like to welcome our second speaker for the introduction of this afternoon, and I mentioned that Judge Kuno Jakob Tafusa, Vice President of the International Criminal Court in The Hague, he was already in this house in May last year. We have been very grateful for your participation, and we thank you very much that despite all the work you have to do, and we know that the court in The Hague is overcharged with cases, that you come again to join us in the effort to find out how we can close the loophole between the destruction of the environment and really responsibilities and sanctioning of those who are the reason for it. Yeah, I give you the floor, and we are very curious about your contribution. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having given me the honor to introduce, to give my contribution to introduce this important conference in this very crucial venue, I mean the European Parliament. I'm sorry for Mr. Gorbachev that he is not here, a living legend and living history, but we hope that he will recover soon. I accepted this invitation despite that indeed in these days my office is quite busy, and I'm quite busy. I left The Hague at 11 and go back at 6, I will be back. Also because, I said I'd accepted this invitation, also because of the really infecting contagiousness and this enthusiasm of Nino Abrami, of colleague Nino Abrami, because he is capable to infect you with his enthusiasm. And I say colleague because He was a judge. Now he is retired, but he was a judge, and due to the saying semel iudex semper iudex, he is still, of course, my colleague. Appeal for the establishment of an European or an international environmental court, criminal court. This is at stake today. Well, let me say that not so many years ago, and a lot of you here can witness what I'm going to say, and I go back to the time where I was a student at university rather than started my job as an Italian magistrate. I was a prosecutor for 24 years. To cross Europe, from south to north and north to south and east west, we had all borders. We had police controls at every border. We had customs. We had to change our money in each country, nearly. Well, I think in each country. Maybe not Liechtenstein, but all the others. We had a big language barrier because due to this very closed national countries, we had sort of a lack of education in other languages. As far as my field, criminal law, concerns, criminal law is strictly related to the national states. It is a sign of sovereignty of each state. And cooperation was extremely difficult also in Europe among the two European states. I had difficulties to dialogue with Austria from Italy or with Germany, with Switzerland also, but for other reasons. When I studied at university, international criminal law was something which was not a subject. And the thought that one day an international criminal court could come to existence was far away. I remember in the book I had to study, it was a footnote just of 2 lines saying that some stupid people somewhere around the world are thinking about it, but let them think. What do I want to say with this? I want to give a positive message, of course. That in just a few decades, say 20, 30 years, things has completely changed. We can now cross Europe without any particular difficulty. We have common money in many countries. Most people, young people, or former young people, now speak 2, 3 languages, 4 languages. The judicial cooperation has absolutely improved. It's very, very much more informal and very much direct. We don't go through the ministry and the ministry says, well, maybe yes and maybe no. And since 2002, we have an established and working, good or bad, because we have very much criticized, but still working, I can tell you working, ICC, International Criminal Court, with jurisdiction over 122 countries today, plus 2. So 124. The plus 2 is because 2 countries we have jurisdiction by referral of the UN Security Council and not by ratification of the states. I could make many more examples of the very quick development we have had in the last 20, 30 years. But I'll leave it here. And what I want to say is that these achievements, which now we consider, and it's wrong, as given, are the result of extensive, of difficult discussions among the states, among people like you are here to talk about environmental crimes. Although the International Criminal Court has started probably by people discussing these issues. None of the examples I made, and no other example I can think of, was established on immediately and on a general consensus. They all have grown within years, and I come back to the example of the ICC, 1997, the miracle in Rome, because it was a miracle, the signature of the Rome Statute. I think it's one of the UN diplomatic conferences which came to a result at the end. In 2002, it entered into force. It was another miracle because 60 states had ratified the statute. In 2009, when I was elected as a judge at the ICC, the states which had ratified were 107, and today, as I said, they're 122. So you see, it is something ongoing. So now I come to speak briefly about environmental court, question mark, European or international, question mark, meaning an international criminal court amended, or an amended international criminal court, or an autonomous European environmental court, criminal court. I think discussions like this and others we had, and we will have for sure, are of extreme importance because they create the fundament of what we want, with the contribution of all parts. And I think this discussion is also quite advanced. We know that it's now, I joined due to what I said before, Nino, who called me, and when he calls, I come. But now it is important to do the next step, meaning to streamline, to have a roadmap, to establish a roadmap towards where do we want to go, where do you want to go? And we have to discuss very specific issues, technical, environmental, and I'm not the person who want to go into this, political, of course, and this is another thing I don't touch, but legal. We have to think about the substantive law. What is an international criminal crime? What is an international environmental crime? Do we know that? Because a crime, to be a crime, has to be designed. The fact, the conduct has to be described in a legal fashion. Do we know what for example, crime against humanity and environmental crime against humanity is? How we can draft something like this? We don't know. We have to think about a law enforcement, a police. We have to think about a prosecution. And I must say, I'm not so much optimistic when we go into this, because when I see what the European Union is doing with the European prosecutor, I must say I'm not very optimistic, because you know, people always want something, but then when it comes to it, they say, maybe we are going too far, and we can't control what we are, the toy we are creating. This is the problem, you know, the balancing. So the temptation is always to balance on the side of the legislator, as I can reckon. So these things have to be discussed, procedural matters. But when it comes to a European court, to the choice to go for a European court or to amend the ICC, because I would not think that a new international criminal court can be established, because this would be to reinvent the wheel from scratch. And I don't understand why we should not use the expertise we already have. And some expertise, maybe not 100%, but some expertise we have in dealing with international crimes. But this, where to go, is a political question. Of course, it's much more than a technical question. If we want something very European, open to the contribution and to be joined by other countries, or if we go for the big thing and amend the judges, which is the big thing because we have to deal with the whole world, and I don't know if everywhere the sensitivity to these problems is the same. I would say no, but I don't want to say that. But this is a political question. This has to be posed. I think just we have to go away from this general debate and discussion into a sort of a more specific, to choose the various fields where we have to go in and discuss, and then summarize at the end. So I myself, and I come to the end, is as far as I can, and obviously if compatible with what I'm doing, I'm ready to give my contribution. But what I want to say finally is, and that's why I started with those examples, I think we have to think positive, we have to act positive, we have to be optimistic, and we have to fight. The recent history teaches that sooner or later, we will succeed also in this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Tarfusser, dear Vice President, thank you very much for encouraging us that all new ideas start small, and when they are good ideas, they get bigger, and one day they succeed. And in fact, by the pain we have seen with human rights in the last century, the outcome was the ICC, and the pain we see in the last 30 years, and we will see more with the destruction of the environment. We hope very much that this gap will be filled with a court to deal with environmental crimes, to go from genocide to ecocide, because both will destroy life and have not to be allowed. Thank you very much, especially reminding us that for the ICC, it started with public debate, with NGOs dealing with it, then politicians coming in, then states joining, and the miracle of the Rome Statute. Let's see where the second miracle will be done for, let's say, maybe the change of the Rome Statute to really deal with these matters. Now, let's move to the next part of those organizations who came here together to sign the Charter. And Corinne was already saying we have 9 of them, and 2.5 minutes for every organization to say who they are and why they sign. 2.5 minutes, please. Stay a bit disciplined, otherwise the most interesting sector that will come to present cases of enormous destruction, we then would run short in time. I start with one of the fathers of this movement, Professor Antonio Ambrani. He has done preparations for this project since years in Venice, in the National Academy of Environmental Sciences. Professor Ambrani, Antonio, it's your floor, 2.5 minutes. I know it's very hard, but let's try, yeah. And you have to push the button. Yes.
Yes.
Time is running.
Encore plus vite, plus vite. Alors, j'ai
Well, I'll be short. And I'll just stress what this International Academy of Environmental Sciences in Venice and the SEJF will do in the next few years. The International Academy of Venice doesn't just want to promote the creation of the European or International Criminal Court for the Environment, but endeavors to achieve legal answers to movements, associations, or individuals asking for justice. We are in contact with many movements in Latin America or in Europe. And we are trying to see what can be done for the situation created by Chevron Texaco in Ecuador, the petrol drilling and the pollution of millions of hectares with an impact on the Amazonian, with 60 billion waste. In Algeria, there is another very serious situation. Between 1976 and 1990, millions of petrol have been extracted and the ecosystems have been affected, as well as the people. 2.5 billion equivalent of gas are burnt every year, and they're illegal practices. Thank you very much. That was very good. Thank you, Antonino. Incredible.
Who believes in justice never finishes to work, even when he's in pension. And we are very grateful for whatever you have done. Thanks a lot. The next one would be Alfredo Pena Vega, representative of the International Criminal Court of Consciousness Against Nature. Sorry for the 2.5 minutes. We just discussed whether you come up, but I think it's more easy if one does it from your place. Please.
Et je vais faire attention à mes 2 minutes. Et tout simplement pour dire que...
Right, I know I only have 2 minutes. So I will just say that I totally agree with the judge who said that we had to be optimistic. We are optimistic in a way because we believe that today such an initiative can make us stronger. If we work together, we will be stronger, and we will be stronger, and we will be able to fight against the perpetrators of environmental crimes. So our tribunal, when we started this initiative in Rio Plus 20, wondered what exactly is a crime against nature. We wondered about that. We asked the question because it is a fundamental question. What is a crime against nature? We've conducted an international survey. It's available in 7 languages on our. You have our website there on the screen. So we've initiated this international survey in 7 different languages because we wanted to understand how different people in different parts of the world define that concept of crime against nature. Because it is important to have this definition, and also because it is vital to start with that if we want to work, to do our job as a, we are a court of conscious or consciousness, as we call ourselves. We are a tribunal, a gathering of citizens, and we want to make other citizens aware of the consequences of natural or environmental disasters. So this is what we do. This is our approach. It's an awareness-raising campaign, if you want, with a political dimension. And now we are taking a step forward here in Brussels, and I think this initiative is totally compatible and totally consistent with the objectives that we've been pursuing over the years. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Oui. Le prochain est Monsieur Jean-Philippe Rivaud, représentatif.
Now we're going to listen to Jean-Philippe Rivaud, representative of the European Network of Prosecutors for the Environment.
I'm giving the floor. First, I will talk in English for this first presentation. For my second one, I will speak in French, so that my presentations will be balanced, French and English. For the European Network of Prosecutors for the Environment was established in 2012 in Brussels, here, on the same model as the Association of the Judges for the Environment, which was established in 2004. Today, this association is made up of around 40 prosecutors coming from 9 member states of the European Union, plus Norway, which is not a member state. The goal of the INPI, the European Network of Prosecutors for the Environment, is to share data, good practices, as well as case law, and it is a place to discuss and to know what some prosecutors, like in Spain, do in this field. If I'm talking about Spain, it's why because they have a very good model of prosecutors fighting the environmental crime. There are some good examples all over the world, especially in Latin America. The European Network of Prosecutors for the Environment, which is an association, it's a non-profitable organization, it's very important, is connected with the IAP, the International Association of Prosecutors, which will hold its next conference on the environmental crime in Zambia, in Zambia on next March. And we are also connected with the Latin American Network of Prosecutors for the Environment, which comes with around 300 prosecutors. And I am a member of the board of the Latin America, as the French Republic has a territory, an overseas territory in Latin America, the French Guyana. So we are also very strongly connected with police forces, and I would like to stress the Interpol, which headquarters is located in Lyon, in France, and which comes with a very interesting unit dealing with the environmental crime. And of course, we are a very young association, 1 year and a half, but we are very motivated in developing our activity in this field. I think that the prosecutors all over the world used to deal with the crime, with the murders of human beings. We would like also to deal with the murders of birds and plants.
Yeah, merci beaucoup. C'était tout en anglais.
So it was all in English.
In French,
Très bien.
Right.
On a Madame Palmieri qui est malade aussi. mais qui est représenté par Enrico Iglesias. Please.
Yes, fine. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I'm going to speak Spanish, so I suppose you'll have to listen to the interpretation. I'm speaking on behalf of Gracia Tusi and Graciela Palmieri, who were supposed to read out a letter that was sent by the Nobel Peace Prize winner, Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, who unfortunately could not be with us. He sent a few lines that I will read to you on behalf of Adolfo Pérez Esquivel. Dear friends, I am sorry that neither I nor my representative in Italy, Grazia Tusi, can be present today in this very important event for the creation of the International Court for Environmental Crimes. There's no more time. All of us are convened and asked to act so that this small planet of ours, called planet Earth, be respected and protected. Immense parts of the planet have been attacked vilely because of speculators, profiteers, multinationals, and unscrupulous governments that privileged financial capital to human capital in the name of a sterile development that only favors a few of us. Our planet has suffered irreparable damage. The air, the soil, the water have been damaged, and this has favored the slow destruction of animal, vegetable species, and human beings. We need to stop this system, which, based on a technically wrong vision and morally pagan as regards the economy, is continuously violating our territories, generating more and more poverty and marginalization. The destruction of its natural resources, the appropriation of biodiversity, and food control, contamination and climate change that are provoked and that provoke the greenhouse effect affect the life and development of the peoples. This problem is not just simply due to the increase of temperature in the world or the ever greater loss of glaciers and the dangers provoked by the acceleration of time. For humanity, there is no more space or time to allow Mother Nature to repose its energies to reestablish the balance that we have lost between the Earth and the essential resources for the existence of humankind and all of living beings. I'm going to try to finish quickly to stick to the 2.5 minutes. But the problem cannot be solved merely through declarations. We need specific initiatives that can put a stop to the devastation and the dangers that are increasing on the planet. We need to put a stop and to sanction governments that destroy the environment and that affect the life of the peoples. The resistance of people is in the increase. The presence of multiple organizations that defend the health of the planet and its natural resources ask for great changes to the large powers in the world. Amongst the proposals and alternatives that are posed, one of the areas is legal action to overcome impunity that do not allow us to run against these companies that damage the earth. So this alternative of a tribunal is a moral need that no one can turn his or her back to. With the injustices, hunger, poverty, and inequalities, and the destruction of our planet, it is necessary to continue sowing the seeds of resistance and dignity. The hope of all humanity will grow with the work of each and every one of us. Let's not forget this. All the very best from Adolfo Pérez Esquivel.
Then I think you are there again.
Only 2 words.
Okay, with Selvas, another organization. Yeah.
Yes, gracias. Voy siguiendo hablando en
I carry on in Spanish. I'm the journalist responsible, coordinator, and chair of the Selvas Association, an association of social communicators. We've been working for the last 2 years, accompanying the news, getting the social media. Some of the news are hidden in the mass media. Just a few words. We have loads of documents, we've got loads of testimonies, research that any journalist can read, any media can have related to environmental crimes. All these documents are also available to the civil society and to the politicians who have to decide what to do. Is also available to the possible in court or institution to be created, because we need to provoke and to create international laws that are understood as prevention. We have those news, and as journalists, we can put it forward, but as journalists, we cannot resolve history. We have to accompany the news so that the news can be hope, in the sense that we won't forget it. We need a court establishing firmly the framework of all this. Thank you very much.
Then we have another initiative called Ecocide, End Ecocide in Europe, and Priska Merz will present.
Hello, I represent the citizens movement End Ecocide in Europe, and we are a citizens initiative, entirely volunteers-led, and we have demanded from the European Union the introduction of a new law, which would make a crime, which would make ecocide a crime. And what we mean by ecocide is the extensive damage or destruction of ecosystems. And what we demand is criminal liability, both for corporation as well as decision makers in politics and business for this crime. So ecocide has been an idea that has been around since the 1970s, 1980s. And then in 2007, Polly Higgins, an British barrister, she rediscovered the concept, and she submitted a proposal to the UN Law Commission in 2010 to amend the Rome Statute and introduce ecocide as the 5th crime against peace. So this is the background that our initiative builds on. And we have come together just last year, and actually about 1 year ago, together with Jo Leinen and some others, we opened it here in the European Parliament. We opened the initiative. And our goal was really to carry out this concept to Europe, because we think it's something that Europe needs to know, that the world needs to know, that the people needs to know. Ecocide is a word. It puts everything that we have been hearing the whole day in one word, and we really believe that, you know, everybody should know about this, and we have been raising awareness, and I'm quite proud that we have achieved 115,000 signatures of EU citizens, and it's not just clicking a button, but people actually have to provide their ID number, their birth date, so it's a very strong commitment by these people, and this demonstrates that the European public demands such a law, and, you know, people immediately understand what it is about. So, we have accomplished this stage, and now we will also hand it in as a petition to the European Parliament, so we will continue our struggle. And we are also very extremely pleased to be here today with some of our partners and continue the work and continue the network and really bring together everybody, because if we have a crime of ecocide, also we need a court to trial this crime. So for us, the International Environmental Criminal Court, or as a first step, the European Environmental Criminal Court, is really the next logical step. And we are extremely proud and honored to form part of this journey. And, well, we look forward, together with all of you, to make it happen.
Thank you very much. Le prochain, c'est Ahmed Alami.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ahmed Alami, representative of FME ILE.
Merci.
Thank you. Dear friends, I would like to present you briefly the Association of Former Ministers for the Environment and International Leaders for the Environment. And I would like to tell you how much this Brussels initiative represents a real turning point for our movement. It brings about hope for the whole international community. As a minister, as a health minister in the Kingdom of Morocco and president of the Movement for Sustainable Development, president of the movement of environmental organizations in the Arab world, I've decided to be a member of that group because we have a lot of personalities who work at the international level to promote sustainable development, but above all because the association aims at defending the rights of the environment at the national and international level, to promote that right and to bring about an international justice for the environment. Such an ambition is clearly defined in our constitution. Thanks to their experience, every member of the association realizes that there has to have real public policies ready to overcome short-term priorities and ready to promote sustainable development. We need to have all the legal tools to defend these borderless environmental crimes. But all national laws have to be complemented by a real international law for the environment and by strong institutions capable of implementing them. That is why the creation of a European or international criminal court for the environment and health is really the right approach. I must also thank all those who enabled that association to prosper, and I would like to particularly thank its president, Mrs. Corinne Lepage, without whom such an initiative would have never come to fruition. Thank you for your support to this Brussels initiative. You can rely on our commitment so that this ambition becomes a reality. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We need you. Thank you for your message. And the last organization is Global Europe.
Europe, it's a global network of legislators, so parliamentarians for environment, created in the 90s in the G7 framework, and today we have a lot of other parliaments joining us. And we had the lunch debate in March last year, and of course we will continue to support the idea of International Criminal Court. Yes, to save time, I made it short, and we continue to the next part of our afternoon, and that is a video message from Gustavo Gomez, General Prosecutor in Argentina's Federal Court of Appeal in the province of Tucumán. I think we have a video message. Mr. Gustavo Gomez and the video message will come if the technical problem is solved. He has to report about environmental catastrophe in Argentina, but we have others, and yes. There are the nuclear catastrophes of Chernobyl and of Fukushima, and I invite Marie-Odile Bertella-Geoffroy, a former judge at the Paris High Court, in charge of the Chernobyl case, and Dominique Leglu, Director of Sciences and Avenir, Sciences et Avenir, Le Journal.
Mrs. Bertella.
Je vais me présenter d'abord.
Let me introduce myself. I was coordinator of the health unit of investigating magistrates in Paris. I'm no longer responsible for that for reasons which I won't explain here today. And I would like to give you an example of criminal law in public health matters, and particularly of negligence. Some may not agree, but if we limit the criminal court to what is intentional, we won't deal with public health problems, because for that, prevention is essential. I investigated the consequences in France of the Chernobyl cloud, which, as you well know, stopped at the French border. So in France, you know that the cloud stopped at the border, so our work was quite important. And for the criminal aspect, the prosecutor's office was opposed to criminal investigation. Let me try and show you the importance of these criminal investigations and the importance of having a European prosecutor to deal with such non-intentional crimes because of the consequences on the planet. I particularly deal with public health. It is important to protect public health when you know that there is a hazard and nothing is done. So it is acts of deceit, of lack of action, and it is very difficult for the British or American mind to understand that kind of file. But I had to do a lot of work to bring about some awareness of the impact of such a disaster. My colleague will speak about Fukushima later on, and I'm sure that had there been an international investigation on Chernobyl showing all the problems in Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, with the delay in spreading the news, or in France, there was also some delay. There were lies about the consequences in France. We didn't bring in the cattle in our stables, whereas in other countries the situation was different. I made a comparison with all European countries, so it is already a European piece of work. We have experts, but the problem is that normally legal experts are independent. This is there again something which is specific in France, and to try and understand what went wrong should enable us not to repeat such mistakes. So we got the information for Chernobyl, for what happened in France. The investigation magistrates have the powers in that case, as all the powers they can search. I could find all the letters that had been sent by the decision makers in France, so we can make progress. And I think that Europe does have a role to play in prevention, not just with damages and compensation. This always works, but what it's done to avoid responsibility, liability. So do we just want to have a society for insurance, or just a society for liability? We don't just want to sanction such or such a firm or person, but what we want is to avoid that this situation should happen again. I remember the parents of 2 hemophiliac children who had died. I had to investigate that file, and at the time they already said, this is a crime against humanity, but this is a historical example. But today, with all the death, we have the very life of the planet which is at stake. So whether it is intentional or not, we must already deal with what is intentional, and then the next files will deal about waste, nuclear waste, asbestos waste. In today's media, for instance, we speak about the Montparnasse Tower. I've known for 20 years that there is asbestos in the Montparnasse Tower, but nothing is done. In France, justice is not independent because prosecutors are directly linked to the Ministry of Justice. Mrs. Dati, sometimes is to be found. She said, I'm the leader of the prosecutors. And this is different in Italy, so that's why I'm not here to represent France, but rather as a member of the Italian Foundation. And it is thanks to this Italian foundation that I think that there is a lot of work to be done, and especially constructive work, prevention, as Nino said, prevention. The very threat of sanction is very powerful. I don't want to speak about the mafia with waste. I don't even speak about violations of regulations. This is quite easy to prove. But here you have a lot of disasters which are silent and which bring about their consequences 20 or 30 years later, like with asbestos. And you have to prove this indifference to the health of people. I think that I spoke a bit too long, but thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup pour votre travail et la référence.
Thank you very much for what you said. You talked about Italy. A former Italian environment minister is here with us. Thank you for being here. We know that we have a lot to do in Italy and in other countries. Right.
Chernobyl, Fukushima.
So now we're going to talk about Fukushima. Mrs. Leglu, you worked on that. Thank you. My name is Dominique Leglu. I'm head of a journal called Science et Avenir. We've carried a number of articles regarding Fukushima recently. So I don't have any specific legal expertise. I'm a journalist, but I'd like to recall a number of points or facts, and I'm here to ask a number of questions, i.e., what can lead to a conviction in this area. On the 11th of March 2011, there was a catastrophe. We haven't seen the end of it, unfortunately. So I'm talking about Fukushima. A number of reactors, nuclear reactors, melted down, and therefore people in the area had to be evacuated and had to clear the area. There's talk of 150,000 people that needed to be evacuated. So when were they evacuated, these people? How were the instructions given? People could have been administered iodine. It was not done. The government gave the instructions, but the instructions were not transmitted. There are a number of things that are not clear, even 2 years or nearly 3 years after Fukushima. So when it comes to health, Well, there is a need to follow up on tens of thousands of people, young people. Who's going to do that? That follow-up needs to be controlled, checked, audited. As a journalist, when you inquire about this, you face tremendous difficulties. Who's responsible? We're talking about Japan, right? Is it an internal affair for Japan? Is it a domestic issue? Is it just a domestic issue? You know, there has been an explosion, and the consequence, the upshot of that was international pollution. I mean, there are maps. The International Atomic Energy Agency, for example, and in France, the National Institute for Nuclear Safety has maps. And when you look at those maps, you see that there was probably international pollution. I don't want to alarm people, but we have seen very weak traces in France. But legally speaking, I assume, I'm not an expert, but nevertheless, I assume that a number of citizens may have been affected by even very small doses of, a product that affected them. And it's something that was totally beyond their control. They didn't ask for anything. And these citizens could complain, and perhaps courts could investigate these matters. I mean, we are journalists. We are not prosecutors. Journalists work with the resources that are available to them, and it's sometimes difficult. I was talking about health issues, but as Marie said, if you say Chernobyl, again, look at the maps. At the time, there were maps, and there are maps on the same sites, the sites of these bodies I've just cited. Well, measurements have been made, and clearly the whole of Europe was affected by Chernobyl, by the Chernobyl incident. Again, innocent victims, innocent citizens have been affected in Belarus, in the Ukraine in particular, and in Russia, but also southern Greece, Wales. A lot of people have been affected. I hope my time is not up. I think we should also talk about other issues, not just health, but farming, farmers. Yes, the nuclear safety is a serious matter. It's a difficult subject. 2 days ago, I was talking about our national nuclear safety authority. That authority are thinking about what could be done should there be an incident involving a nuclear power plant in France. Radioactivity knows no borders, as you know. So should measures be taken in the event of a nuclear incident in France? Well, Germany, Belgium, Switzerland would need to work hand in hand with France to coordinate measures. Who would be responsible? How can information be obtained on that? These are very important questions. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Leglu.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Leglu. I went to Fukushima a few months ago, and I could witness the movement of Fukushima residents to prosecute the executives.
It's lying for days and days, not informing, so that they could not protect themselves. And then the indemnization was $1,000 for all the damage that has been done. So they have a movement for criminal charges and not letting them go away. Then I propose that we continue with another big issue, and this is oil pollution. Nuclear, chemical, and the petrol industry. And I mentioned already that we are happy to have the ambassador of the Republic of Ecuador. And the ambassador, he represents the country in Paris. and Mr. Carlos Jativa is with us. He is happy to speak from his place, but he is invited to come up if he wants about the oil pollution. And we will listen and witness a big scandal that is going on. We are better in words than in images, as I see this afternoon. We just now have the case of the destruction of the environment in Ecuador, and we invite you to just testify and give us the message. Please.
Merci, monsieur. Tout d'abord, je vais
I'll speak first of all in French to honor Mrs. Corinne Lepage, who kindly invited me, and I would also like to thank all the associations which enable this event. So, as I was saying, the human beings and the ecosystem necessary for its survival can't depend upon the capital. It is rather the capital which has to depend on human beings. No business, however powerful, can't be beyond the law and beyond human rights. Ecuador, as you know, was the first country in the world to state in its constitution the inalienable rights of nature. And there's the right to protect the inhabitants and to protect nature against violations. This is our purpose, to counter the campaign led by Chevron, which wants the people of Ecuador to pay for years of pollution. In Chevron, which absorbed Texaco, is the 7th company in the world. Texaco in Ecuador worked from 1964 to 1992. During that time, it was responsible of getting rid of 64 million petrol on our forest. At the end of the contract, the transnational committed itself to use technologies which were used elsewhere with secure reinjection of toxic waste in the ground. In Ecuador, Texaco never used such technologies and rather used old-fashioned technologies to get more profit. The multinational has even gone so far to try and convince our inhabitants that polluted waters would make them stronger because they had a lot of vitamins and minerals. 358 drilling places in the Gulf of Mexico, and about 2,000. They represent 2,000 times what happened on the French coast with the Erika in 1973. That is to say, 1 year after Texaco left the country, local people organized themselves and they created a defense front for the Amazonia to demand compensation. It is such fund and not the government which took proceedings against the company and wanted this to be taken to court in Ecuador. This was obtained in 2002, and Texaco committed itself to respect the decision of that court in Ecuador. The multinational had also signed a program of rehabilitation to clean up about 162 pools out of 1,000, which in fact it never did. These horrible pools have the residue of oil, toxic waters which continue to pollute the soil and the waters of Amazonia. The court condemned Texaco to pay $9.5 billion and to present public apologies 2 weeks after the decision for having provoked one of the most important environmental disasters in the world. And if it didn't do that, the compensation would be multiplied by 2. And this was done. Chevron is responsible for 3.5% of world CO2 emissions, so it didn't give any apologies, and it even went so far as to pretend that during the trial, lawyers had falsified documents and put pressure on scientific experts. So it appealed, and on the 12th of November 2013, the court reasserted the decision made. Since that decision, Chevron spends millions of dollars in a terrible campaign against our country when the state has never taken proceedings against the multinational. Through that campaign, Chevron Texaco wants the Ecuadorian state to be liable so that it can avoid its own responsibilities. New proceedings have started on the 14th of October 2013 in New York, and Chevron had advocated a RICO law against the front on the basis that they had created a kind of criminal association to try and get money from the multinational. A decision is expected in the next few days. So such a campaign launched by Chevron Texaco has an impact on the legal situation and in the media. And the referral of the New York Federal Court in 2004, which decided in favor of the state of Ecuador, and then the Arbitration Court of The Hague took decisions in 2006 and 2009 in 2 trials. And here, the defense of the state said that the court was not competent because the convention between Ecuador and the United States entered into force 5 years after the end of Texaco's investment in the country. In the most recent trial, Chevron 3, the multinational hopes that the court in The Hague will state that Ecuador hasn't respected its treaty with the United States and that Chevron Texaco is not liable for the damages, and that it is the national Ecuadorian company, and in the end the Ecuadorian state, who should pay the compensation decided. But it says that it has nothing to do with the consequences on the environment, because in 1992 it got a derogation for that, and in the end that a moral compensation is due to it. So even though this convention doesn't have a retroactive effect, the court in The Hague on the 17th of September 2013, the court in The Hague said that Chevron Texaco could not be exempted from its liability towards Ecuadorian citizens, but it asked the government in Ecuador to suspend the decision of the court in LaGuardia. And you'll understand that the government cannot do such a thing according to our constitution, because we have the rule of law with a separation of powers between the executive and the judiciary. The state prosecutor asked the court in The Hague to suspend the proceedings because the decision in appeal from November 2013 changed the conditions of Chevron's request. So the court decided to postpone the hearing, and in the meantime there was a new meeting of parties which took place on the 21st of January 2014, and it was a purely procedural meeting. The prosecutor showed that the new calendar adopted put off or prolonged the proceedings by establishing new actions. So it confirms the initial position of Ecuador, which said that the company presented its request too early without having used up all the resources according to internal legislation. So we could have an action in nullity. In September 2013, the president went in the area where you have this wells which had been closed, the company having left the country. So the president put his hand in one of the wells, and we have a proof that the company is lying when it says that the pollution was created by Petroecuador. So the government has decided to launch an international campaign to defend itself against such lies and manipulation organized by Chevron Texaco, and makes an appeal to the international community to come and find the truth in Ecuador and let it known to the whole world. There is also some thing which was not noticed during the session of on human rights. 25 countries accepted the common declaration which advocates the creation of a binding legal instrument so that such multinationals have to be supervised by human rights institutions. This is a novel initiative, and to support Ecuador in this situation, you have support committees in more than 34 countries, and the government in Ecuador would be very grateful if the European Parliament could also support the country, because its support is essential. As our president said, we invite all our friends in Europe and in the world to join us to express the refusal of the arrogance of such multinationals which destroy our environment and then want to have nothing to do with it. Chevron mustn't remain unpunished.
No, thank you very much, Your Excellency, to bring this case in front of this audience in the European Parliament. And in fact, you will give us this documentation that we can work with it, especially if the judgment in the next days, as you say, is against the country and in favor of a multinational oil company that has done a lot of campaigning, a lot of lobbying in order to win that case. And if the state has to pay $9 billion for environmental damage by a company, I think this would be one of the cases where you should have an outcry and should resist. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
We will
I'm sorry it took up so much of your time.
No, it's okay. You cut down your speech for the 7-8 minutes, and we are grateful to the presentation you have done. Thanks a lot, and we will support you. I think our technicians have now managed to understand the parliament system, and we get now finally the sound and the images of the incredible Bhopal case.
India has been an agricultural country. East to West India today. Those times.
Today, these symbols of ancient India exist side by side with a new sight, modern industry. India has developed bold new plans to build its economy.
The 1984 operations manual changed all that. Union Carbide, in effect, rewriting its rules. Document states very clearly that even the MIC-7 process, as developed by UCC, Union Carbide Corporation, has had only a limited trial run. It can be expected that there will be interruptions in operations and delays that might have been avoided by adoption of proven technology. This proposal was approved by Union Carbide's management committee, including Warren Anderson. Industrial disaster in peacetime history. Official estimates put the toll of that night at 3,000 dead. Unofficial estimates suggest a number as high as 10,000. By some estimates, at least 25,000 people have died since the disaster as a result of exposure to toxic. Warren Anderson was not arrested because of politics, but because of the law.
Diplomat, the council from Bombay tried to visit Anderson.
What is that? Are you now? Or have you ever? Hope so.
Very disempowering for the victims.
To use the time for drinking, bathing, washing clothes, whatever.
सबसे पहले तो कसूरवार हमारी भारत सरकार है कि ना वो यहाँ फैक्ट्री लगाने की इजाज़त देती। भारत सरकार ने जानबूझ के जो इजाज़त दी थी उसे मालूम था कि यहाँ पे MIC बनाई जा रही है और MIC कितनी ख़तरनाक केमिकल है, बस्ती के बीच में कारखाना डालने की इजाज़त दी। सबसे पहले तो हम अपनी भारत सरकार को ही कसूरवार मानते हैं।
Both the governments, the central government and the state government of Madhya Pradesh, they are trying to impose their responsibility on each other. There is no one who can take the responsibility of Bhopal. So this is the reason why the cleanup of the factory is not being done.
What we have seen in these last 24 years is that if you are a big corporation, if you are a big multinational corporation, you can do whatever. I mean, even now, even just earlier this year, in the State High Court, the counsel for Dow Chemical stands up in the State High Court and tells the judge, yes, we are aware that the Indian government is asking for $22 million so that we can do the cleanup in Bhopal. But I must inform you, he's telling the judge, that we are an American corporation and we are not bound by your jurisdiction, which means you cannot tell us what to do.
Jurisdiction is main problem because we don't have any international court where we could go and fight this type of cases. The Indian court have they have limited power.
So long as justice is denied in Bhopal, as it is being done today, the world is that much unsafe, because there is a possibility of a similar crime being committed anywhere, everywhere in this world.
This is very right time and high time to understand that we need international code of conduct, we need international criminal procedure code or environmental code. because I don't think country law and very limited way of thinking could deal this type of problem.
Union Carbide is absconding from from justice, from some of the charges are some of the most serious offences in the Indian Penal Code. They're absconding from justice, and yet their current owner Dow Chemical is doing business with Union Carbide's products in this country. So they are dealing with an absconder's property in this country and getting away with it because there's no forum.
Yeah, thank you very much, Antonio Abravi, for one of the biggest scandals of disaster against the life of 20,000 people and the environment without sanctioning and prosecution of the responsible company. Just want to say 10 seconds?
One phrase qui veut dire, oui. Federica Palmarini.
Thanks to watching the structure of a video. Now it will be 30 years in December, and nowadays the factory is still it still was not bona fide. It's still there, and between 15,000 and 40,000 people are still forced to drink water with MIC, and. Also, there are many kids that tell us that they were conceived after the disaster, that they cannot speak, they cannot talk, and it's been proved that the problem is related with the MIC. Thanks.
Merci à Federica qui a travaillé pour beaucoup de mois à Bhopal et à l'Académie et les autres personnes.
Yes, thanks, Federica. Thanks for this presentation. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour votre travail. C'est un grand travail.
Thanks to that piece of work. It was very interesting.
I could say goodbye to our judge, Kuno Tafusa, who has to go back to work on the International Criminal Court. Thank you for coming. Since we know now how the videos work, I hope that the video message from Gustavo Gomez from Argentina, province of Tucumán, could now be coming in. And I would invite now, because we come to the last chapter before you then take the floor, to invite attorney Viviana Del Tedesco and Daniele Grasso, if they are here.
Renato Grasso.
And then already Rosalinde van der Vlies could come because we are now moving to the last part before we open the floor to all of you. Oui, et bien sûr, Monsieur Jean-Philippe Rivaud qui va venir aussi.
Yeah, Mr. Jean-Philippe Rivaud is kindly invited to join us here at the top table.
Bon, la technique marche?
Est-ce que ça marche?
I hope technology is with us.
Autrement, on continue et on va voir le...
Non.
OK. Alors, ça marche pas.
So it's not working. Apparently, it's not working, but he's hoping it will work later. Now, Mr. Grasso, Renato Grasso, right?
Renato.
Bien.
Renato Grasso. Il est là. Voilà.
Oh, right, Renato Grasso is right there.
Je crois on commence... non, Daniele Grasso.
Je suis ici seulement pour lire la contribution de l'avocat Grasso parce que je crois que je lis mieux en anglais que lui.
Non, on a fait ça. On est maintenant sur Justice Tools in the last chapter. OK. Bon. Ça va.
Tu lui donnes son temps. 7 minutes.
5 minutes. Voilà. OK.
In recent times in Italy, many processes have been held for crimes committed against the life and safety of people and the environment, with serious charges of homicide and unintentional injuries. Poisoning soils and food substances,
But I think this part of the was already at the beginning. We are now on the tools. Sorry, we take the documentation and we'll work it into the event. We are coming to the solutions. That is the presentation of the Fondation Basso at the beginning.
Okay.
Thanks for coming. Thanks. I think we take that in the documentation of this day, and you tell Renato all our best wishes. No, that was before. We take it then. Now, I have Viviana, the desk.
Italian prosecutor, really.
Sì, yeah. You want to tell us about the asbestos case in Italy, how to...
Not really, not. I changed the...
Okay. Push the button.
I'm only
The
a
red
simple...
button.
Only a simple prosecutor of Italian court. And... I studied this matter in Italy. I don't speak English very well, like a lot of Italian people, really. So I have a little problem to to tell you what there are the real problem of the environment. In my experience, teach me that the great problem is that not only the environment is the business, but more the environmental problems is the business, the illegal business. And the problem is that the government aren't very aren't present in this problem in the territory. The office, the court in Italy, currently in Italy, the responsibility for the handling of environmental matters follow the general criteria of any other. And this is impossible because the problem has outside the territorial country. And we cannot do our investigation outside. Only few courts can do it because they have the resource, but not the little one, like me, for example. And for us, it's very difficult. I think that our international court is the only possibility to resolve these great problems in the world. I think that that film teaches this difficult, explained is difficult. Now the problem is there, is still there, because the judge, the prosecutor, the investigation aren't is not enough. We can study the origin, we can study the issues, but not the solution in this moment. And the world needs the solution. A lot of years, a lot of money for the processes, a lot of conference, a lot of words, but the problem is still there. We need a system that think about the after, not only what happened in the past. the past is the past. There are a lot of problems that we don't thinking about in this moment, not in the past. And a lot of people has a lot of problems for this. The criminal, the illegal business know that. And they are very happy that you stay here to think about the past, because they are very prepared to bring the possibility for their business. So we have to change this mentality. In my office, every day, I'm only a prosecutor in Italy, but every day I think about this problem. My work, I would like to do a lot more than I can do in this moment, but it's impossible for me. And every day, for me, is a bad sensation. I hope that that international court is organized different than now. Is organized to study, to think about actually problem of the territory. But it need a substructure with the chemical, geologic, geophysical consultation with the judge, with the prosecutor. Because if we don't know the territory, we cannot work for this world. The fragmentarity now move on an international scale in so much, but is anachronistic to a fragmented organization of investigative work. And this is the problem now.
Yes, thank you very much for this message and this contribution. You're right, we need capacity building and training in possibilities of investigation, and you gave us the message how big this job still has to be. I come back to you to present the contribution of the Fondation Passo and of Renato Grasso, please.
Bonjour. Alors,
I speak French about the foundation. I've come also to tell you about this foundation, which is trying to meet new challenges. We have the Permanent People's Tribunal in 1979, which was created as an experimental way to have analysis strategies so as to put an end to impunity and to stress international rules. We want to establish a link between human rights and the right to having an environment which respects individual life. So I could read now the contribution of Daniele Grasso in English.
In Italy, many processes have been held for crimes committed against the life and safety of people and environment, with serious charges of homicide and unintentional injuries, poisoning soils and food substances, air pollution and aggravated damages, and finally, in recent years, also for malicious disaster processes, which, to the extent of the criminal offenses ascribed to the accused, could be considered both cases of national and supranational interests. All this was the result of a serious and progressing, in recent times, environmental culture as an involved approach of modern society toward a proper model of existential welfare, which favored, the one hand, the introduction of new sources of law constituting the transposition of treaties or the EU directive, and, on the other hand, the sharing of contestation of intentional and not merely negligent offenses, consequent upon the trial of the accused, on the awareness of the dangerousness or harmfulness of industrial processes and products that were hesitant. They allowed us to steer the Italian legislation to the homogenization with the laws of the EU countries, and the case law to decision inspired by a more pronounced sense of protection of the legal interest protected. One of the important issues that emerged in the debate resulting from the comparison of the parties involved in the processes I am referring to was that the need of identify the correct order of gradual protection of the interest involved. The court order issued in order to act on the causes of pollution or poisoning were often criticized in terms of public opinion because of the injurious effect of the employment of employees of the concerned facilities. The evaluation law concerned the outcome of balancing between the protection of health and the protection of the workplace, both constitutionally guaranteed rights. The solution adopted was, of course, always to consider the right to life non-negotiable and not subject to compromise, as a universal recognized and fundamental right, so prevalent on any other protection reserved to the individual. In Italy, this was involved more than once that, pursuant to a special legal framework and through a ministerial order, responsible companies could be put under receivership, acquiring their leadership and entrusting their management to professional lawyers or accountants unrelated to the economic interest linked to the profitability and the companies themselves capable of converting the pollutants or harmful production cycles. The experience carried out mainly in the sector of industrial chemistry has been overall positive. Where possible, were also saved jobs. Otherwise, the state itself has intervened using the so-called unemployment benefits. However, the causes of disaster or pollution have always been removed for strongly attenuated, a result that might not have been obtained if the state had not intervened. What was instead almost always not really was the remediation of the environment drawn from pollution, and this for two reasons. On one hand, the operation of the recovery were almost always so expensive as to be beyond of the financial capacity of those who caused the damage, and also frequently outside of the resources available to public entities that were supposed to take over the intervention. On the other hand, of course, just often the area subject of a reclamation has a volume so large, sometimes indefinite, that would make extremely difficult any serious and accomplished project of recuperation intervention. All this proves definitely that the general and supranational scope of the object of protection interests, hence the need for a further cultural leap general. The earth is a universal heritage. Its not small part, albeit entrusted to the property of the individual, may be neglected or forgotten by the community of men, who have, by virtue of the gift of reason, the responsibility for the protection and preservation of the rest, of the animal and vegetable world. In this regard, the important judgment of the Court of Turin in the case Eternit gave us ample space to the rating of liability of the accused to have compromised with their own ducts the right of the environment to its healthiness. The establishment of an international criminal court for the environmental offenses and a European court of environmental crimes with the respective prosecutors has called for in the Venice Declaration of 212, signed by several authorities, will mark a historic achievement, fulfill through their competence and an unavoidable and now essential function of supranational protection of man's environment's fundamental right to life. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that important message. Thank you. And we have two more interventions. That was a rather mammoth program, but you see that this is a multi-dimensional topic. And I invite Mrs. Rosalinde van der Vlies, Deputy Head of the Cabinet from our Environment Commissioner, Janusz Potocznik, to contribute to this conference. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Let me first of all tell you that I'm extremely pleased to be here with you this afternoon. I do realize that you've been here already for some hours and that the conference is coming to an end. But I'm happy to share with you a bit I would like to now zoom in on the European Union and to see basically what the European Union has or has not done when it comes to environmental crime. But I think, first of all, as we have seen throughout the program today, I think environmental crime has some very specific elements, which, of course, should not be forgotten. We see, of course, there is a clear cross-border element there. So this requires a common solution. This cannot be solved only by one country or even not by only the European Union. And I think also the environmental crime is special because very often this is also linked to other forms of crimes, be it tax evasion, money laundering, organized crime. And several international bodies have also concluded that the scale and the nature of environmental crime has seriously changed over the past years. Europol has presented in 2013 their threat report. And there they said that specifically the illegal waste flows and also the trade in endangered species have been particularly increasing. And of course, this is something that also within the European Commission we cannot deny. But of course, in order to have an environmental crime, there needs to be a violation of a law. Otherwise, there is no crime. Now, in the European Union, we started developing, as you may know, already for 30 years now, European environmental legislation. And now, I didn't count them personally before coming here, but I've been told that we have over 200 pieces of European environmental law on our books. But by the nature of it, the European environmental law is a minimum standard. So this means that the member states of the European Union, they can become more strict even when they have to transpose the law. But one of the constraints we have in the European Union is that when we adopt a piece of environmental law, and for example, we say, okay, illegal certain shipments of waste are illegal, when it comes to really imposing the sanctions, this then should be done by the member states. So if you look in the European environmental law, you will then see the member states have the obligation to translate this law into a national law, and the member states have the responsibility to make, and then we have this general formula, we say effective, proportionate, and dissuasive sanctions. Now you can imagine that what can be effective, proportionate, and dissuasive sanction, member states have different interpretation. And for some member states, if you commit an environmental crime, the sanctions will be quite severe, whereas for other member states, the sanctions will not be very deterrent. So as European Commission, we really saw this as a problem, and we were extremely pleased that we managed in 2008 to have a European directive adopted on criminal law, which would basically oblige all member states for certain violations of European environmental law to adopt criminal sanctions at national level. This was an enormous step forward because, of course, there is, as you may know, a constant fight between what we can do at the European level and where there are still competences of member states. But there were some rulings of the European Court of Justice that were preceding this proposal that basically said, yes, the European Union has a role to play also when it comes to the criminal law. And that's why we could adopt this directive. We couldn't say to the member states, you have to adopt, for example, a sanction saying a certain fine, or you have to, for this infringement, you have to put people in jail. But we could ask in 2008 the member states that for very important violations of European environmental law, at least there should be criminal sanctions in the member states. And that, I think, was a major achievement. What we are doing now from the European Commission is that we are looking what are the effects of this piece of legislation. The member states were obliged to translate this directive into the national law in 2010. And from the picture we have so far is that we see really many differences between the member states. So the Lisbon Treaty has given us a bit of more powers, if you want to call it, with respect to criminal sanctions. So we will have to see whether it would be necessary to make further rules or proposals for rules on this at the European level. Now, I would like to mention also two other important initiatives that we have taken. One was also responding to Europol's findings that there is a problem with illegal waste shipments, especially also electronic waste illegally leaving Europe and then being burned somewhere in Africa and really posing a lot of threats to the human health. So we have made a proposal which has become a law, also thanks to European Parliament quite recently, that would force member states to strengthen their inspections on shipments of waste. And we really hope that with these strengthened inspections we can stop some illegal flows of waste leaving Europe and going to third countries. But also we are looking more horizontally into the development of obligations on member states to further inspect. Because of course it's very good to have a law that prohibits things, and if the law is violated, makes it illegal. But if there's nobody investigating, then what is the use of it? Then the law is nice that you know something is illegal, but if there is not a real risk of detection, what's the use of it? Now, this is typically something where the inspection obligation is at national level. We at the European Commission, we cannot put in a uniform and go on the ground and carry out environmental inspections. This is really up to the member states to do it. But we launched a stakeholder consultation last year, where we asked the stakeholders whether there should at least be some minimum rules established at European level that would force all member states to start carrying out environmental inspections. And we have received a broad support from the stakeholders to do so. So this is already a good first step. Of course, it goes without saying that there are quite a few member states who would not be very happy if we, as European Commission, would propose rules to further strengthen the environmental inspections. But we are working on this because we really feel, I mean, what's the use of a law? It's just a paper tiger if there is no enforcement, if there are no inspections. So this is for us a very important focus for us for the environment. And we are very pleased, and this is also thanks to European Parliament, that the importance of inspections has always also been highlighted in the 7th Environmental Action Programme. This 7th Environmental Action Programme basically identifies the priorities for the European Union in the area of environment up to 2020. And also there in this programme, the emphasis and importance on inspections and surveillance is highlighted. Let me just see. Yes, another very important thing, and this is, I promise, the last thing I will mention. And this is linked to wildlife crime. This was the other crime that Europol also highlighted last year as an area of concern. We have in European Union many pieces of legislation that are implementing the CITES Convention that deals with the international trade of endangered species. So, I mean, wildlife trafficking is prohibited in Europe. But very soon, hopefully next week already, we as Commission will come forward with a communication on wildlife crime, where we take stock of the measures that are being taken by the EU and at international level to fight the wildlife trafficking. But we also look at the effectiveness of these measures, enforcement issues, and we would like to launch a broad stakeholder debate on which measures should be taken, be it at European or international level, in order to tackle the wildlife trafficking. Because we've seen in the past years, despite the rules that exist, both in the EU and internationally, the crimes are increasing instead of decreasing. So I think I would like to stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Rosalinde van der Vlies, for a very refreshing, lively contribution to our debate. In fact, in the European Union, we are a union of law, of rule of law, and these vacuums should not exist, but we still have an implementation deficit, and therefore we are working on this. And greetings to the Commissioner, Janusz Potocznik, who is quite active and engaged in all these things as well. Thanks a lot. Yeah, last intervention for solutions is Jean-Philippe Rivaud. Maybe you give us an idea of what can be done, what should be done to solve the problem, please.
Thank you very much. It's me once again. I'm so sorry, but as I promised before, I will speak in French. Donc, alors je ne pensais pas.
I never dreamt that I had such an opportunity to answer the Commission, who unfortunately doesn't seem to listen to me. I was very interested by what the Commission's representative has just said, but I'll be quite frank. This is very good, but it doesn't correspond to the practice. Let me give you a concrete example. The network of prosecutors for the environment was created in 2009. We got the moral support from the Commission and DG Environment. They said, well, it's very good. You have to create such a network, which we did on the basis of our personal funds for some years until in 2012 we set up our organization, and last year at the same time we asked for some funding from the Commission, and the Commission, who had encouraged us for years, then told us, well, no, you won't get anything from us. So what has just been said is very interesting. When one represents an institution, one is there to receive the strikes. As a prosecutor, the Association of Judges for the Environment, which in the past was funded by the Commission, is no longer funded by the Commission. So I'm going to put an end to that attack, and please forgive me for that, but we have to speak the truth. I was a judge for 10 years and a prosecutor for 10 years. Whether a judge or a prosecutor, a magistrate, has to tell the truth, even though that truth may be somewhat unpleasant. I think that politically you have double standards. And this is nothing new. I'm sorry for that, but we have to speak the truth. So you understood that it is not very polite to speak about oneself, but I've been a magistrate for 24 years, and I've heard about this ideal for many years. We discuss, but in that community of people promoting the creation of that criminal court, there are lots of words. And I think we should think about action now. So I'm slightly disappointed, even though I'm very happy to be here. What is disappointed? I saw that there was an Italian colleague, my French colleague, and you are all here representatives of NGOs, but there are no practitioners of criminal law for the environment. And this shows one thing. For the issues of criminal law for the environment, I've been dealing with that since I was in a region near Lyon called Villefranche-sur-Saône. It is the region that you all know because it is the region of the Beaujolais, so we speak a lot, but in fact lawyers doesn't remain silent about that, and I'm going to try and understand why. So the principle of the creation of a criminal international law court is fine. We all agree on that. So perhaps we should speak about what we don't agree with, because it's not very interesting to speak about what we agree already on. So we say we have to create something very good, but what should we create? We have to do law. To speak is fine, but we have to create law. So we had already an international criminal court which works well. If we have a specialized jurisdiction, we could perhaps create a new section of that criminal court which works well. It works well, but it takes a long time before it gives its decisions, and it is a very costly institution. So should we create a new section in the criminal court with an additional protocol to the Rome Treaty? We could discuss that issue. Or should we rather create a criminal court for the environment, which would be an independent institution, which would be highly symbolic, because it wouldn't just be one section of the ICC, but is it a pragmatical approach? And my association and the position of the Association of Judges favor to create a section in the criminal court which already exists, and it is a very heavy machinery, as you well know. So it is a question that I raise so that we have something in the legal sense, because we discuss, but we don't create law. And this is regrettable, because our approach is mainly judiciary and legal. So you've understood that I'm somewhat annoyed by the situation. Enough of talking. But we must avoid wishful thinking. The films are very good, but we all agree on what we've seen. We've already seen them, or we already know that. So we have to go beyond that and bring back the reality principle in our discussion. Mrs. Geoffroy talked about the cases for judges and for prosecutors, for counsels as well. Let's not forget them. There are very few specialists in that environmental field. It is a new competence for practitioners, so it is a new competence. And we should work on that, first of all, because to create a criminal court, which would be a huge machinery, that's not bad, but who will direct it? Do you need to have people who are not trained? My colleague described the French situation, which is not perfect, even though there has been some progress. We now have specialized hearings for environmental crimes, but it is the unique example. For 15 years, I've taken part to international experiences in Latin America, in Africa. I can tell you that the situation in France is far from perfect, but it is not perfect either in other countries, with some exceptions. In Spain, for instance, which is perhaps a model we could follow. So to speak about the International Criminal Court for the Environment is absolutely necessary, but we have to start by organizing the action of justice in each one of the member states. It is a pyramid. We need to have in France, in Belgium. The Belgians are not bad at that. They have a lot of interesting institutions in the Netherlands, Hungary, Spain, Greece. Every national legal system must be ready to fight such crimes. Let's not forget that we need to implement what we call chain. Judges give decisions in important cases, but we have to start from the beginning. Unless we have competent policemen, how can we reach the final judgment? It is impossible. So we need to have policemen who are well trained, prosecutors who are trained as well, judges, and we are not there yet. So let's start with that in a complex legal situation with technical and scientific aspects which are very difficult to grasp for magistrates. And there is also something crucial in our investigations. We need to think about the fundamental question of expertise and forensic science. And so we need to have contacts between judges and magistrates in the at the international level, because all these crimes against the environment are international. Rivers and birds do not stop at borders. So I hope that we'll be able to go one step further in the future. Thank you very much. A marathon always starts with this first step, and I think that today's event is a first step, a major step, because we try and open our minds to these issues. And thanks to your contribution, we are aware of what is missing. We need, of course, this awareness, but we need to put that into practice at the European level, as our representative from the Commission told us, but also at the international level, because we have disasters which don't know any borders. And I think that this was a very rich afternoon. And we must continue this work together. NGOs, professors, judges, courts, MEPs, everyone is needed. So the conference started very well with the words of my colleague, and they will end with the words of Corinne Lepage, who has done a huge work.
Après-midi.
Thank you. Yo. Thank you for your patience. It was really a mammoth meeting with a lot of speakers. As President Gorbachev said, we need perestroika for the environment. I agree. Mr. Prosecutor, I hear you, but I don't think we are losing time or speaking in a vacuum. We have a political problem, quite clearly. No one wants an international criminal court for the environment, except NGOs, except civil society, except those who every day undergo the consequences of those crimes. If we are not able to organize ourselves, when people are clamoring for something to be done, well, it's regrettable. It will be regrettable. I'm a lawyer too. So I know that we have to deal with legal issues. I know that we have to deal with procedures. We have to address jurisdiction, the question of jurisdiction. We have to define environmental disaster. We have to define the concept. We have to define a number of concepts. But we need to be strong, and we have to be able to do everything we can, even at European level. You are right, madam. A piece of legislation that is not applied is a worthless piece of paper, a paper tiger. Sometimes we deal with virtual issues. We need to break that circle and do something practical. So the Brussels Charter is a good example. And that's the purpose. We need a roadmap based upon what we have already, i.e. existing initiatives. There are a number of initiatives. That's the International Tribunal of Conscience. There's the People's Tribunal. We are there to support those initiatives, to support them, because these initiatives are important for us to have an influence. Then we need to do something at European level. If we wanted, if there was a political will for that, we could rapidly put together a European Environmental Tribunal. There's the 2008 directive you've talked about. A number of states, including France, do not apply that directive, as you know. But you were right to talk about the 2008 directive. But that directive is not sufficient because it doesn't cover everything. The Prestige accident is a case in point. I mean, there was pollution in 3 states, and finally 3 people who were not really the responsible persons were cleared, and that was the end of the proceedings. You also talked about endangered species and toxic waste. Well, yes, this could be the starting point of a European Environmental Tribunal, because these are European issues, not national issues. We are making slow progress towards the setting up of a European Prosecutor's Office. I hope this will see the light of day. And there has been a precedent. I mean, there's a tribunal which is placed under the jurisdiction of the Court of Justice. We know that this is possible. So it's all a matter of political will. So what we are doing today aims at making sure that this political will sees the light of day. And then there's things that need to be done at European level. President Dafus had said that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when people started to talk about the possibility of setting up an international criminal court, no one believed it was possible. We have it now. The ICC is a reality. It exists. So I agree with Mr. Rivo. We have to go ahead, make headway. Now, you've heard the charter. You know, there was a clip, a video, and someone has read out the charter. So that's what we are proposing. We would like a specific crime to be defined, i.e. environmental disaster. This needs to be defined. That's the starting point. So it's a first step, really. So what comes next? Well, first we'll be together. We'll be united. We have a platform. We have 10 members. We'll have 15 members, 20 members. We'll have more and more members, and the platform will live. We are not going to be formalized or become more formal, but certainly we will be a network, and we will work hand in hand. We will work on legal issues because it's a legal matter, but we also work in other arenas, politics and society. We are going to send a letter to Mr. Barroso and Mr. Van Rompuy. That's for the European part of it. And we are also going to write to Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the United Nations Secretary General, asking that this issue be put on the agenda of the high-level conference of heads of states and governments that will be held in September 2014 in New York. We want the issue of criminalizing these acts, judging environmental crimes. We want that issue to be on the agenda. We hope that a number of states will support this initiative. That's what we want to do. Now, I'm not saying that we've solved the issue, but I think we've made tremendous progress because it's the first time that such a platform with, judges, magistrates, NGOs, political organizations. It's the first time that such a platform is constituted with people who want to work together and have a clear direction. I hope that with this roadmap we will be able to reap results in the next 10 years, because it's vital that we do this. Thank you very much.
Antonio, thank you very much. Thank you all very much for coming. I think there is a chance to sign, I don't know where and how, over there. Those who want to sign the Charter of Brussels are invited to do so. Sorry that we ran out a bit of time and there was no more interventions from the floor. But I think it was interesting to have the case studies and all the different reflections. And Corinne, you have the last word. And then
last word pour remercier mon équipe, c'est-à-dire.
Yes, I'd like to thank my team, François, Eric, Claire, and Lina. Sorry, I'm tired. Lina, thank you. They've worked day and night to organize this meeting. I'd like to thank the organizations that have helped us provided in the documents and translations. I'd like to thank my team, and I'd like to thank the interpreters as well. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So, have a safe journey back home.
Merci.